And we are live. Hi, good evening, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to Level Up Live. I'm just going to give a few minutes for other people to come in. Good evening again. I am Dr. Sharita Gaskins-Tillett. I am your host. Welcome to Level Up Live, where we feature the wonderful accomplishments of women physicians, both inside and outside of the exam room. I have a really interesting treat for you guys this evening. I'm so looking forward to talking with our guest, Dr. Ann Huntington. Like I said, I'm just going to give a few minutes for other people to come in, and then I will introduce Dr. Huntington. If you are watching us live, say hello in the comments. If you're watching the replay, hashtag replay. Feel free to ask questions as we go along. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to introduce Dr. Ann. So Dr. Ann Huntington is an internal medicine trained hospital medicine physician. She has expertise in quality, patient safety, peer review, privileging, and credentials. Most recently, she was the medical director of over 50 hospitalist physicians during the pandemic. She has special interest in lifestyle medicine, integrative medicine, leadership development, physician wellness, and coaching. She is the founder and CEO of Give More Naturally LLC. With special expertise in the field of essential oils, she is launching an unbranded CME course for physicians on the safety of essential oils and the scientific evidence as an integrative tool, including information beyond aromatherapy. Welcome, Dr. Ann.
Thank you. I'm
How
so
are you
happy to
this
be here.
We're happy to have you. So I am ready to jump right in. Well, first, I guess we should get to know you a little bit. So tell us what you do now, and what we should know.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again for having me. I'm so excited. So I am, as you mentioned, a hospital medicine physician currently. That is my clinical practice in a couple of tertiary care hospitals. And I love hospital medicine. It is so rewarding to take care of folks who are very complex. It's the nerdy side of me that really likes the complexity, but also to really figure out what's going on with them and really be able to make meaningful progress in, saving their life or improving their health on a pretty quick basis, as we can see that in the hospital. And then my really side passion is in integrative medicine. And I can kind of talk you through that journey of how I came to this. But that has been really rewarding to see how we can help people in the way that they, most want to be helped, while keeping in mind safety and efficacy and all of those things that we, hold important in medicine.
Okay, well, why don't you walk us through the journey?
Sure. Well, I trained in academia over a decade ago, and then I finished and came home to where I grew up in Idaho and did outpatient internal medicine and inpatient internal medicine for 7 years. So when I was in clinic, I was not in the hospital. It wasn't, one of those where I would go and do both in the same day. But I would do a few days of hospital work every couple of months.
Okay.
I did that for a long time and loved my patients, loved, taking really great care of them. And that's when I got involved in a lot of the quality work and really, focusing on that. But over time, I really figured out that I couldn't help everybody as much as I wanted to. And it was also really difficult to take care of people with many different medical conditions and many different medications in a very short time frame, and without the help of maybe pharmacy support or a counselor or some of those other things. And I found myself more and more really trying to figure out how to help people improve their lifestyle, how to help people get off of unnecessary medication to avoid polypharmacy, how to help keep them out of the hospital and really live the life that they wanted to live in a healthy manner, where they didn't have to come and hang out with me all the time,
Right.
or they didn't have to go in the hospital, but how
Sure.
could they really thrive? And the model that I was in at the time made it really difficult to be able to thrive in that setting. It wasn't authentic to me to see people so quickly and really just kind of refill medications and it felt kind of like a Band-Aid. I was putting Band-Aids on Band-Aids.
Sure.
And I became very interested in lifestyle medicine, which is, what we can see where a healthy lifestyle, nutrition, exercise, adequate sleep, avoiding toxins, too much alcohol, smoking, et cetera, and really positive relationships, stress reduction, how those can really improve our health in a dramatic way. And, spent time looking at the evidence and really counseling my patients a lot. Um, and then I was always open to the other interesting things that my patients did. They
Okay.
would often come to me with different supplements and different, other natural, quote unquote, natural therapeutics that they would use. And I didn't know what they did. I didn't know the
Right.
research. I
Yeah.
didn't know if they were safe. I didn't know what medications they interacted with. And they weren't able to tell me either.
Right. Because that's not something that they train us on. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I didn't have that training and there wasn't, really great resources for me to look those things up. And so I kind of felt like I was a little bit stuck and I couldn't, give all the answers on the research. And I found that, most people were understanding and they were like, well, it might be safe, so I might try this. I want to try this. I
Yeah.
was like, okay. But sometimes they would go and seek help elsewhere. And sometimes the answers that they received, I don't think were the best evidence-based
Yeah.
answers. And over time, I just decided, you know what, I want to learn about this on my own from my background. I want to make sure this is safe. I really want to take a deeper dive into this. So I left my outpatient practice about 4 years ago and to just transition to hospital medicine where I could, do the conventional medicine that I loved and taking care of folks, but I also wanted to dedicate additional time to learning more about a lot of these things that I had heard of and seen. So that was kind of the genesis of that career, transition. Um, and then I, kind of started taking a deeper dive into learning more.
Okay, so now you're currently working in hospital medicine, but you are also doing this integrative piece. Are you seeing patients in that capacity, or what are you planning to do with the integrative lifestyle medicine side?
Yeah, that's a great question. Right now, I've got a course that I'm developing on essential oils. I kind of came to that process, and I can share how I fell into that little piece of it. I'm doing a course for physicians because I found, that in this little niche, there's not a lot of education around that, and I really found that people are using these like crazy. They're all throughout the market. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Yes,
And, the OBGYNs, they're seeing it too. The
yes,
pediatricians,
we
they're
are.
seeing it. The moms are putting it on their kids. And a lot of docs don't really know much about it and don't know the safety, don't know the concerns. And so, as I've used these and kind of researched them for several years, I've found that there's some benefit in educating my physician colleagues on how your patients might be using them. They might be using them in ways that I won't recommend, and they might be using them in ways that may not be safe, and they might be using them and getting some benefits. So I think it behooves us to educate ourselves on, what's going on out there and how we can help support our patients.
Yeah. So tell us, what are some of the uses for essential oils that you would recommend?
It's a great question. Um, Now that I guess we'll have to, share with everybody who's listening that this is not, medical advice that I'm giving. Certainly there's no patient physician relationship with anyone. Certainly talk with your doctor or healthcare professional, but and also that they're not FDA approved for any, treatment or cure of any diseases. So this is more. I'll talk kind of a little bit more about, how can they improve our well-being and our
Sure.
wellness. And I think there's a lot of important information out there and important research that supports the use of these for stress reduction. And there's really, really some cool research that I'll share with the docs in our course about how that can help. Lavender is one of probably the most common essential oil that everybody's pretty familiar with. It has
Yes.
over 1,000 research studies on lavender in various, modalities. And there's a lot of clinical trials going on around the world, including in some big institutions in the United States on lavender. But the ability to help people reduce their stress, help people to sleep a little better. Um, there's some opportunities for, even some topical uses. And oftentimes, as an internist, I'm certainly familiar with some of the topical over-the-counter products that are available. And, the essential oils are kind of similar to that. Some of the muscle aches and pains, some joint aches, some, a little bit of anxious stress or a little bit of stomach upset. Those are some common ways that people will use these.
And do you recommend that they use them for those things, or have you found? I guess what I'm asking is, does the research show that they are effective for use in those areas?
Yeah, that's a great question. Depends on the essential oil. It depends on, what the research has targeted towards. But in general, yes, there is research to suggest that these things can be beneficial. And there's also a lot of traditional use. So essential oils have been used for many millennia in various, civilizations around the world, and Egypt and in China and Greece and Rome and in Europe during the Dark Ages. They were used, and these cultures, and even in Australia with tea tree and eucalyptus, and these cultures have found uses for them in the plant, in various plant matters and poultices and different bindings and different ways to use them. And they found benefit, and that's why they keep using them, because they've got, those in their environment. And then the research has kind of evolved to further investigate, what are the properties of these? What are the, how do we test them, and how do we try them against various symptoms and various disease entities and things like that. So it's been fascinating to take a deep dive into the research and really learn, there are some benefits for these. And then there are some, maybe less evidence-based ways, or that the research just hasn't caught up with the traditional uses that people are doing. So it's been fascinating to kind of see both sides of that.
Okay. All right. So now, me as a consumer, you mentioned how booming this industry is. As a consumer, how will I know if I'm getting a good product? Because you say that these are not FDA approved, which to me says they are also not regulated. So how do I know that I'm purchasing a quality essential oil?
It's a great question. So you're correct. These are unregulated, and the industry is very interesting. I'll kind of give a little bit of background on what's happening and where these are found. So essential oils are found in actually our food, in the flavoring industry. They're found in cosmetics. They're found in skincare products and in hair care products with lavender and tea tree and others, and rosemary. They're found in, different supplements and different, functional medicine type modalities. They're kind of, everywhere, and in soaps and anyway, lotions and all of those things. So how do you know that what you're getting, the lavender that you're getting in a lavender bath bomb, really
Right.
has
Or
lavender in
the
it?
sheet spray. We use lavender sheet spray here in my house to help
Do
with
you?
sleep. Yeah, we
Yeah.
do.
Yeah, exactly. So how do you know that's what it is? So a little bit more about the industry that'll kind of carry into how we find this. Because there's such a big market, there's such a big desire to have these, there's also a lot of money in them. And there's kind of obviously some incentive to potentially stretch the profits and stretch the margins and make the lavender last longer.
Yeah.
And so there's some different ways that the different manufacturers will do this. They'll often buy the plant product from the farmers, or from a commercial farm, or from small family farmers, and they will sometimes sell that to a broker, a middleman. And there can be, sometimes you can make these chemical constituents in the lab. For example, lavender has linalool and linyl acetate, and sometimes you can add a little extra of those to enhance the smell. Or sometimes you can add a little extra menthol and peppermint. Or for an expensive oil, you can dilute it with a lesser expensive oil.
Hmm.
And so there's different ways that they will, kind of adulterate these products. And there's many other ways I'll go into depth in my course. But sometimes you don't know where you're getting it. A few things that I would recommend people, keep in mind is look at the company. Is the company reputable, meaning do they show how they test the products? We can talk a little bit about testing, but do they show how they test the products? Do they show where they get the products from? Do they show what the Latin name of the plant is? For example, sometimes people might say they're just selling cinnamon, but it could be cinnamon leaf or cinnamon bark. Those are very different, have different properties and different price points.
Okay.
And then you can, there's a lot of different ways you can look at the testing, and then you can also smell it, and see, does it actually smell like lavender? Sometimes you won't even get a lavender smell.
Right.
And then, you look at the cost too. These are actually pretty expensive to produce because it's a lot of plant matter that's distilled and concentrated. And so if you're seeing a lavender for $5 over the counter, probably not true pure lavender. Sometimes it'll say pure or organic or natural, but even if they've diluted it with an organic oil, they could still say organic, but it may not
Right.
be pure. So it's pretty tricky. And in the course, we'll talk more in detail about how you can kind of detect what kind of testing is involved in, in finding out, what you really have, and if there are any heavy metals in there, if there are any contaminants. And then we'll talk about, some companies that kind of help do that testing, the third party testing. And that's another piece, is their third party testing, and do they publish the results? So those are
Okay.
just some quick,
Sure.
snapshots to finding out, what you're getting.
So now one of our viewers is asking this question. I know that you have some restrictions on the things that you are allowed to say,
Uh-huh.
but someone's asking what companies are reputable. Is that something that you can answer, or
It's a
do you
great
feel comfortable
question.
answering?
Yeah. So I'm not going to talk about specific companies right now.
Okay.
I would say, look for the way that they test. GCMS testing is very important to detect the chemical constituents,
So
and
is
so
this
they'll
something,
see
is
that.
this, I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt you. Is
Yeah,
this
yeah,
something that you can find on the bottle, on the label, or is this where you need to go to the website of the company? Where are we looking for these things?
yeah. So I would check out the website. They should be sharing their GCMS information and results, and sometimes on the bottle they'll have a little lot number that will share where you can, and then you can match that on the website and make sure that, that'll give you more information. I would look at the companies and see, do they have a medical advisory board? Are there physicians and scientists and researchers that are involved with the testing? And then I would look at the third party testing on, and look at those results too. There's to see if, they've been found to be pure or adulterated. But yeah, I won't go over to specific companies at this time,
Sure.
but those are just some kind of basics on how you can look into this more.
Okay. So now tell us a little bit more about what you're planning to do with this course. Are you hoping to have physicians begin to integrate the use of essential oils into their practice? I'm really curious about, just the format of it. Is this something that's dose dependent? Is there, formulas that you will be sharing with the physicians in your program for certain types of conditions? And just tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, it's a great question. Um, as a physician, my first concern is safety. So I want to educate the docs on, what's safe and what are the cautions with these. So there's a lot of time spent on, safety of these. And and then we will go over really a deep dive into the research of some of the most common essential oils. How are these used, and what is the research support for these traditional uses? And then, yes, based on lots of asks from lots of docs who are interested in this, we'll go over some of the common quote unquote protocols or common essential oils that are used for different ailments that people may have. And some of these, I'll acknowledge, are more research based, and some of them are less research based, but are more traditional use based on, ways that are used around the world for different modalities. But yeah, we'll give the docs some really actionable ways on using them themselves. And many of us, before we would ever recommend or talk with our patients about it, we often try them out ourselves to kind of say, how do I actually do this, and what do I use, and work on it with your family and things like that. And that's what I did first. But yes, there are many physicians that are very interested in implementing these into their practices, and many physicians in the integrative space are interested. And then a lot of it's just kind of shared decision making with the patient and physician, because many of them, the patients are already using these, and I want everybody to know, this is how you might be using it, and this may be something to counsel them about. And so there's different ways that docs can use these in their practices, or even just in their personal use.
So now through your research, have you found that there are interactions with medications, like there's certain populations of patients that you would caution physicians not to use certain essential oils in, that kind of thing?
Yeah, that will be a big, heavy part of our course
Okay.
on kind of specifics in children and in elderly patients and pregnant women and your specialty and lactation. There are certain concerns. I'll share as much of the research as I found and as much of the cautions as I found. Certainly, whenever we put something on or in our body, whether it be food or, products or medicines, they're still filtered, through our bloodstream, through our
Sure.
liver and kidneys. And so folks who have chronic kidney disease or chronic liver disease, there's certain cautions as well. And then, folks with seizure disorders and in the perioperative, time frame. So there's different considerations that we would do.
Right. Because I think the media, the popular media or whomever would lead us to believe that because this is a natural product, that it's safe across the board.
Right.
Or because these are natural products, they're safe across the board, safer than, maybe a medication might be. But it sounds like that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah, we already know of medications that are natural, derived from natural ingredients, right? And
Absolutely.
they can have some toxicities, and some of them I use, digoxin or digitalis, but they can have toxicities. And so I think you're right. I heard that as well when I kind of started learning about this. People would say, oh, they're 100% natural, so they're 100% safe. It's like, no, you can't say that. That's that doesn't go over. But there are ways to use these in general quite safely with appropriate guidelines and with appropriate knowledge as to the safety of these. They're produced by the plants to be able to protect the plants. And they're produced with a lot of, they have a lot of chemical constituents in one essential oil. And so there's a balancing effect that they have. But it's just knowledge, it's just education on how to use them safely. And if you do that, you can in general use them quite well.
Okay. So now you mentioned, I'm going to get in your business a little bit now. You mentioned that you tried them out on yourself and your family. Can you tell us a little bit about which ones you tried and what you used them for?
Sure. So lavender we use a lot, certainly for its calming properties. And I think we use it the most around bedtime.
Okay.
We try to have really good sleep hygiene and turn off the screens before bed and, kind of have a bedtime routine. But sometimes the kids are just wound up. Sometimes they need a little extra. So we will diffuse. We'll put, use a little diffuser, which has a water reservoir, and you just put a few drops. So I use lavender a lot. Bergamot is a citrus oil that I use a lot also for its calming effects at bedtime. And especially if you don't like a floral smell, it's a citrusy smell.
Okay.
I use tea tree a lot for different things. I've got some teenagers, some preteens that occasionally have some skin blemishes that pop out. And just a little dab of tea tree can help calm that down. And then I use tea tree in stinky shoes too, and in tennis shoes.
Okay.
It's pretty good. And it's really, before I found essential oils, I used to have a spray, kind of that I would use in shoes. But you would get that chemical spray and it would make you cough. You have to do it outside and things like that.
Right.
This I believe is, a better option. It's much less expensive too, but just a few drops in those shoes and they smell a lot better in the morning. So those are just some fun ways, but we will use sometimes different blends that for muscle aches and pains. My husband went on a long bike ride and was not in super great shape when he did that, was super achy. And so we, put those over the muscles and felt much better. And then, eucalyptus when the kids have a little cough. There's some things that, that can be soothing, that can really help improve their symptoms, help calm things down, and really, I think, help improve our quality of life. So there's, been trial and error, for sure. But
okay,
it's fun.
So now, we talked about, I'm an OBGYN.
Yep.
So what are some of the ways essential oils are used in GYN or obstetric patients?
It's a great question. I'm cautious about this one because there's not a lot of research done on pregnant women and lactating women.
We have our disclaimers that we're not telling you to use any of these things. We're just having a conversation about
exactly
some of the things that have been seen.
Yep, exactly.
And things that have been researched, but not saying that we're suggesting that you do any of this in your house.
Yeah. Lavender, is often very calming. A lot of women will use that. Some of the citrus oils, are just, even when you diffuse those, they brighten things up. There's different ones that women will use for nausea, even ginger, and even even the ginger root, a lot of, women will use a little bit for nausea. There's certain ones that, are used during the labor process that I know, certain health systems and different practices will use some to help with a little bit of stress and help with, the discomfort. and even help move things along a little bit. And that one I won't talk about on
Okay.
live camera, but I will talk about it in my course on what some of those are used. And then there's even some research in a little bit of the aftercare, a little bit of, some of the perineal care and soothing and things like that. So it's pretty interesting. I always, always good nutrition and, stress reduction and exercise and all those things that I know are part of a healthy lifestyle as well. This is just another tool that augments that.
Right, right, right. And I think I heard something about maybe menstrual cramps, that some essential oils have been used for those as well.
Yeah, we did talk about that. There's some studies that kind of help show some soothing benefits to some of the premenstrual cramping and I didn't see any that compared to any, pharmaceuticals or, a lot of them are more placebo controlled. But there has been shown to be some benefit. And anecdotally, I hear of, lots of women doing, using those.
Do you know of any place where a consumer can find information on, like say they're experiencing severe menstrual cramps or they're having muscle aches and they would like to add essential oils to their arsenal and they want to talk it over with their physician? Is there a place where they can find that kind of information where they may, where people are at least anecdotally talking about how a particular oil is being used?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a little tricky. Some of it is with, some of the companies that sell essential oils. There can be a lot of education, and there's, even some safety courses out there that can teach, everybody about that. And then I believe it's Johns Hopkins that has an integrative website, and there's certain other, I'll give some of those resources in my course, but certain other, kind of basic resources that some of the academic institutions are putting out. I found that a lot of the information that I've seen, not Johns Hopkins, but with other websites, they're ultra conservative and they're not taking into account all the ways people are using these. And so that's why my course is kind of educating the docs on, like, this is a more expansive view of what people are doing. And I know that, so it's a little bit tricky to find really good education. So that's again why I'm trying to educate all my colleagues to say, hey, this is what we would do. I have been asked multiple times to create a course for everybody, and that may be something in the works further down the road as well.
Okay. So it sounds like the takeaway message is that essential oils are good in certain circumstances, that they have lots of variants, but they need to be, the quality needs to be verified and, it needs to be in a kind of controlled environment. So you don't, as far as ingesting and, how you're using it needs to be, you need to verify with a medical professional that the way in which you're using it is recommended for your condition. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think that's true. In general, they're quite safe when used appropriately. There are some good resources out there that some of the companies put out to help use them safely. There's a lot of research going on all around the world on these properties and how to use them better. And then I always encourage people to talk with their doc and say, hey, is this something that, I can consider? And then they can kind of do a shared decision making. The risk of having major side effects, major adverse effects is actually decently low with most essential oils. Most of the concern is with kind of some skin irritation when people put them on topically and they don't dilute them properly with a kind of another carrier oil, we call it, or they put on a citrus oil and go out in the sun, and that can increase the risk of sun exposure. So there's some that you have to watch out for, and you don't put them in your eye. that's a pretty given. You don't put them in your ear. But in general, they're pretty safe and easy to use. They are concentrated. If you get a very high potency one, they can be very concentrated. You only need a couple of drops, and so in that setting, they're generally well tolerated. Now, obviously, from a toxicology standpoint, if someone were to ingest a whole bottle of something, that's a different story. But that's that can happen with anything. So,
okay. Well, we're almost out of time. Is there anything else that you want us to know about essential oils that we haven't already talked about?
Oh, great question again. There's probably so much. I would say, I think, for my physician colleagues and for others, it's an opportunity for us to come together and really, kind of open our minds a little bit. Historically, some of the docs will say, oh, it's snake oil. And it is potentially if you get a very diluted one that doesn't work. But I think there's opportunity to learn more, and there's opportunity to kind of work together and share our knowledge and share the research and see where we go.
Okay, so now tell us, how can we find you? If we're interested in taking your course, we want to learn more about the use of essential oils in our practices. How can we find you and work with you?
Yeah, so my website is givemorenaturally.com. And so www.givemorenaturally.com, and it will have, some information to be on an email list, and we'll be announcing the course coming soon. And it has some basic information on essential oils on the website. And then I'm also found on Facebook and on LinkedIn as well under my name, Ann Huntington.
Okay, so my last question is always the same. If, so I'm going to do it from the consumer perspective. If I am, as a consumer, am interested in using essential oils, or I have been using essential oils, what is the single best thing I can do to up level the effectiveness, or up level the safety, whatever you decide, however you decide to answer the question, but to up level my use of essential oils?
Yeah, great question. I think it's knowledge. It's really, learning, studying, and having a critical eye for what's out there, and really, just doing your homework, and hopefully we'll share additional information soon, and kind of more widely as I get, further into this journey. But there's information out there. There's really good information, and, find out where the docs are recommending. I would say follow where the doctors are recommending these, who know more about these, because
Okay.
typically they kind of find where the best is and where the best research is.
Okay, so we will do our research. Thank you. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. Thank you for sharing that valuable information with us. You've given us lots of food for thought and lots of homework, apparently. Too. So
Right.
I'd like to thank you all for joining us as well. We will see you next week on Level Up Live. Just a reminder that registration is open for A Weekend for Me, which is our spring retreat. It is being held in Cambridge, Maryland, March 24 through 26. The website is www.aweekendforme.com. Early bird registration is closing on next Friday, January 27th. So if you are interested in registering, you need to do that very soon, because early bird registration is ending next Friday. Number one. Number two, registration is limited to the first 25 participants, because we want to keep the size small and intimate. So I'm happy to answer questions. Send me a DM. I'm happy to answer questions about it. Anyway, we will see you guys next week. Thanks for joining. Take care.
Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome.